The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology Podcasts with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost Here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, welcome everyone to the Future Tech Podcast. My name is Josh Thomas. I'm filling in for Rich Jacobs today. And our guest today is Pawel Kuskowski from Coinfirm.io. Hello, Pawel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Really glad to have you on here. And so Coinfirm.io, as far as I understand, they offer technology for compliance solutions in the cryptocurrency and blockchain worlds. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
That's correct. We like to call each other RegTech in this space. And basically what we are doing, we're providing compliance solution for cryptocurrencies, which is effectively, a little bit niche area, especially in the cryptocurrency space, but it's a growing area.
Okay. Yeah. And so as far as compliance, could you dig into that a little bit more specifically? What are we complying with?
So one of the biggest challenge in cryptocurrencies adoption is anti-money laundering compliance. So this is our focus, and this is something which we are tackling at the global level. So basically, when you are doing transactions in cryptocurrencies, you are exchanging value. Every time you are exchanging value, if you look from the regulatory perspective or being compliant with laws and regulations, you need to understand, whether any of these funds would be engaged in any high-risk transactions, like, for example, drug trafficking, human trafficking, hack, ransomware, etc. And this is part what is called, anti-money laundering, and terrorist financing, counter-terrorist financing obligations, which you have every time when you are running a business which is exchanging value. So this so far was one of the biggest obstacles for adoption, and one of the biggest pain point for cryptocurrencies, especially in the discussion of with traditional finance. Traditional finance like to say that this is the tool for money laundering, cryptocurrencies. This is the fraud, and it's used for fraud, and etc. And with our tools, we can show, and actually we can help managing this kind of situation and say, listen, cryptocurrencies is not worse than traditional financial sector, and we can manage this rules, and we can manage this requirement the same way or even better than you do. And this is what we are doing. This is our key goal to basically help to bring these regulations into the cryptocurrency space.
Well, that's very important because there's a large factor of people out there who are very down on cryptocurrencies because those of us who are less familiar with Bitcoin and what's been going on the last few years, when they hear the word Bitcoin, the first thing that comes to their mind is Silk Road.
Yes, exactly. And this is frankly, from what we have in our database, we understand more and more about the risk related to cryptocurrencies and what is the exchange value and what is typically the risk associated with these transactions. And from my perspective, and I spent in this area a number of several years basically, and I was global head of anti-money laundering function for Royal Bank of Scotland. And comparing to the cryptocurrency transactions, it's the risk is not higher than the traditional sector. So it's actually really comparable to the traditional sector. So I think we can show, and we have data which we can show basically by saying that cryptocurrency is not more or less engaged with money laundering, tax evasion, and similar than traditional sectors. So we help with this data basically, and we can show that you can use cryptocurrencies in very secure way, and you can manage the risk, because this is primarily all talking about managing the risk associated with money laundering, and you can adopt cryptocurrencies and you can grow this market. So this is something which we really resonate with the entities which are operating on the market. They want to have the streamlined process. This is one of the biggest points of the traditional sector, streamlining compliance. So in traditional sector, it's estimated that around $60 billion is spent on compliance in the Western world. Basically, this is the number which is growing. And the pain, sometimes 20 to 30% of the staff is engaged with anti-money laundering compliance, and the effect is really poor. And what we are doing with Coinfirm, basically, we are bringing efficiency through the technology to the cryptocurrency space. And from our estimates, we can lower this engagement of the manual work for compliance, dramatically. So this is something which we not only help building the network and building the adoption of cryptocurrencies, but also making this space much more effective. There's another way which we approach this is what we call AMLT, so the token of compliance, which we are introducing, and this is really something which is completely new and completely changing the paradigm of AML and in the cryptocurrency space using blockchain.
What is AMLT?
So AMLT, we want to build a network of people who are exchanging information between each other about the risk associated with addresses, the risk associated with transactions, and build basically the network of exchanging of information. And also the AMLT will be also used in Coinfirm platform to purchase reports and to also be able to be compliant in this space. So there are two ways of approaching this space, right? And one of the key things which we want to achieve is basically building a network and making more transparent and democratization. We like to call this democratization of compliance, right? And just to give you some examples, let's say we have business in Somalia right now, and Somalia is example of when you would have almost no banking in Somalia provided, but because of the what is called AML risk and primarily corruption risk. And corruption is typically connected with politicians, army officers, and etc. But it could be that you have someone in Somalia which is really legitimate business, and it's really someone worth doing business with, and it's most likely this entity will not be engaged with corruption activities. But currently they have no access to the banking system. And similarly, if you want to replicate this system, the current AML regulations into Somalia, you would end up in excluding Somalia's entities from the network. So we approach this in the way that if we have companies like exchanges, for example, yes, which are transacting with Somalia's entities, and they do this for a number of extensive period basically of time. Over time, you learn that this is very good entity, right? And this is something which you've done KYC, you understand who is the client, you understand what are the risks associated, and you do transactions with them, and you should be able to tell this to the market that this is good entity, right? And in cryptocurrencies, you can do this because you can indicate that this address belongs to the entity who is your client and who is good guy, yes. And this is basically someone on the other end can see, okay, this is something which I got. I understand, this is very good client, And on this basis, I can make my decision upon, basically whether someone should be onboarded or not.
So Pawel, walk me through just on a basic level. How do you accomplish that? How do you how does your process work to verify that the person receiving or sending the money is a good guy?
So if you are exchange and you onboard a client let's say from Somalia, you understand this is what it's Somalians, and you apply, initially basically you apply some low thresholds for transactions, and you see the patterns of transactions, you get reports, you see where the funds are flowing in. Over time, you're gaining the trust with the entity, and you see you expanding the services to these entities, you expand financing to these entities. So, and it's over time basically you learn, okay, this is someone who is trustworthy, and this is someone who is basically, I know everything what I can know about this entity, and now I am able to tell this to the market through AMLT and through Coinfirm platform. But it's effectively this is good address, or this address belongs to the entity which is let's say with good reputation. And in this way, basically, if someone else is onboarding and they see, okay, this is someone which the address belongs to the entity, which, for example, by other recognized exchange is telling us that this is good guys. It means that I can, when I am hesitant on them onboarding someone, I can say, okay, on this basis, I can make this decision positive.
Okay. And have you seen the fact that you're doing this? You mentioned something earlier I want to go back to and ask you about. Mm-hmm. You said that the risk of money laundering is no greater or worse in cryptocurrency as it is in more traditional sectors, and you can back that up with data. And when you said that, it made me the first thing that I thought was, anything really cool that can be developed and invented can be ruined by humans. Humans are going to be who they are, and money in whatever form, whether it's a piece of paper or some zeros and ones on a computer, money can be corrupted in any possible way. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. There's nothing saying that because I'm using a more traditional fiat currency that I'm less corrupt than somebody using digital currency. But just go back and talk about that for a minute, because the whole reason your entire profession exists is because people make bad decisions and they do stupid things with money. Just talk a little bit about that for me.
Yes, I guess you're right, and the biggest problem in the entire industry that is identifying the high risk or the bad apples, basically, right? This is the beloved explanation. I mean, you have good apples, but one is rotten and one is giving the bad flavor for whole other apples. And in terms of cryptocurrencies, it's exactly the same thing. You have good players who enjoy cryptocurrencies in the way they are designed, and there are some bad players who are using this for benefit of doing some illegal transactions and etc. And what you need to do, and this is why our profession is actually designed, you need to be able to understand, as your organization, as part of the organization, you need to understand who are your clients and make decision on this basis. So if you think, if you don't accept criminals, right, or people who are paying with cryptocurrencies for ransomware, or getting money from ransomware, or basically paying for weapon trading and etc. It's something it's your decision, and you should have tools to understand who of your clients would be doing this, right? And this is the sole purpose of our profession, to understand this exactly what is happening. That's one part. What is more important in the cryptocurrency space is, because of the cryptocurrencies are designed, you have peer-to-peer transactions, you have also peer-to-peer risk exposure. So it's different, and it's very much so it's in cryptocurrencies you have disintermediation, right? So basically, there's no one. You should be able to transact with other counterparty without anyone between. But you tend to forget that in this way, basically, you have this risk exposure to other counterparty, and in cryptocurrency, this risk exists even more. And in this situation, basically, if you are receiving funds from someone else in cryptocurrencies, you have immediately almost the risk of this transacting party. In the traditional sector, you have like banks or payment services companies who are managing this risk for you. It's almost very clearing this money for you, right?
They've inserted themselves into the middle of the transaction, partially to protect you and partially to make sure they know what's going on.
Exactly, and partially to basically control it in any way possible, right? But what we are doing is we don't want to be middlemen in this way. We don't want if you want to do peer-to-peer transaction, we can provide you the data about the other party. And this is what we are doing effectively, right? So, before or after the completion of transactions, basically, you want to get understanding of what risk is associated with other counterparty, right? Who are you dealing with? It's like, it's like taking a loan. Would you take 100,000 loan from unknown person? You personally, for example, You probably wouldn't.
Probably not. Yeah, because I don't know what strings are attached to that.
Exactly. So this is exactly the same with cryptocurrencies. When you want to know what are the risks, whether this makes sense or not, or basically you are party of someone who cannot spend Bitcoin somewhere else because it's tainted, and they want to give it to you, or transfer this to you. So basically, they get rid of it. So this is something which we are, helping with and managing this for you.
So talk to me about some of the the pre-Coinfirm days. You mentioned that you were compliance for AML compliance for the Royal Bank of Scotland. Talk to me about some of the experiences that you had there that led to this new technology.
So it's the number. I mean, it's really interesting experience in terms of traditional financial sectors. One of the biggest eye opener is if you learn that, for example, there's around $2 trillion in money laundering every year around the world. It's around 3 to 5% of annual global GDP, which is basically laundered through financial institutions. And it's not even 1% of these transactions are captured. So this is something you have 99.9 almost percent of transactions which would be flying through financial systems without being noticed. So this is effectively, if you realize, how much of the effort and how much of the pain to actually impose on financial institutions and effectively on the clients as well, because you need to do, you need to bring a lot of papers, right? You cannot open accounts easily, and etc. So if you think about it, how ineffective is this system? Then you start thinking about, okay, what is the problem, right? One of the biggest problems with traditional sector is the banks see only what they can see, right? So the banks see the incoming transaction, internal transaction, outgoing transactions of the clients. They do KYC, they analyze this, but effectively, they don't see, where the money is coming from, right? They don't see, who is the other party, what is the other bank, where the money is coming from. They don't see overall picture. And when I saw how the blockchain is designed and how cryptocurrencies are, managed, and how cryptocurrencies are transacted, and that you have, ledger of transactions which you can analyze, I said, this is completely a game changer, right? This is something which effectively, finally you're able to analyze transactions. So it's almost like all SWIFT transactions or bank transactions are open up for analysis. And this is something which is, completely new standard. So if you compare to, this is something which, and this was eye opener for me, and I said, okay, this is something which we can finally do things properly. when we implement technology. So that's one part. And the second part is I immediately noticed that the only solution for this, it's not something which you approach. I give you, dear compliance officer of I don't know, Bitstamp. These are the tools. Manage this risk, yourself. You need to know a lot. You need to understand what you are doing. But this is something, a tool. What we need to do, we need to build global standard. So almost we want to make life of compliance officers as easy as possible. We need to build technology which is helping them to manage the risk. And so almost like we want to do the lesson learning and etc. for you before you, and then we can transfer this, some of this knowledge to you. But effectively, what you need to do is, really have everything written in one go, do analysis, compare this whether this is matching your profile internally, compare if everything makes sense, and this is the way you build the future. So global standard. This is our focus as well.
Okay. And so I can see how your previous experience really lent well to discovering the blockchain and seeing those applications. What were some of the early challenges that you faced as you were building this solution?
I think there was some skepticism coming from, as you can imagine, from cryptocurrency space, because it's all about anonymity, it's about freedom, etc. But what we say, we like to say is, there is also responsibility coming with this freedom. So it's something which, it's a choice at the end, and we want to keep the choice for you to do the transaction or not. But effectively, if we are talking about this cryptocurrency space, it needs to be managed in the way it's responsible. So there are certain rules, and you don't want to have, growing market which is completely uncontrolled in terms of where the money is coming and going, when we are talking about bad players in this environment. So this is something which are my earliest challenges. People who are saying, oh, you are not needed, you destroying everything what Bitcoin is about, and etc. But it's interesting experience which because I see these people coming to us after a year and saying, listen, can we implement your tools in our business? Because our business is growing fantastic, and we earn a lot of money, and that's fine, that's perfect. But but we don't want the regulators coming to us, and we don't want to be party of the illegal transactions. And when one of the examples, we have some dramatic experience with one of the guys who came and they said, listen, we didn't know, but we got funds from the ransomware for the one of the hospitals, and so data was basically hostage of the Bitcoin ransomware, and the Bitcoins which are paid for this were transferred to this exchange. So they said, we don't want to be party, or we don't want to make this happen ever again. And are you able to help us with this? So this is something which was kind of dramatic experience, and we said it's a personal choice at the end, right? So you can close your eyes and do whatever you want to do. That's fine. That's your choice. But if you choose not to be party in closing eyes, basically, that's us where we can help you with. And also it's interesting, with AML token, in this situation, basically, you can exchange this data and you can enrich this data with your information. And suddenly, banks love to, and this is something which is quite important as well. Banks love to tell that, oh, it's all about privacy. We cannot exchange this information about the client because it's privacy aspect. There are ways to exchange information about bad players, without actually breaching privacy. And it exists in the banking system. The banks just didn't take opportunity to implement this, and we can do this in the cryptocurrency space and make it much more transparent, much more efficient.
Very good. Yeah, and so it's Coinfirm.io. Any suggestions or recommendations for those of us in our audience that want to learn more?
I guess we are very active on the social media, on LinkedIn. We also, work with great partners like Token Market, Isolast. We work with the financial institutions who are implementing our solutions in the internal processes and procedures. So you're probably gonna meet us at some point when you are, in the cryptocurrency space. And very important aspect, there's a growing market for ICOs, initial coin offering, and we see a lot of clients coming from this angle as well. So it's something which basically are helping with as well.
Excellent. Pawel Kuskowski from Coinfirm.io. Thanks very much for joining us here on the Future Tech Podcast.
Thank you very much. Looking forward.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.